They're going to break through and they're going to get in.
Okay.
And so it's the 5th floor and we run around and I'm not finding this member's office. And we circle and we go all the way around. And I'm like, shoot, she's not here. She's not here. And so I literally go on Google and I'm like Googling on public information what floor they're on. And so we start realizing, oh, they're on the 5th floor. They're on the 1st floor. The 5th floor is where the Progressive Caucus meets. So that's why I have that muscle memory, at least where we met pre-COVID. And anyway, so we start running down this spiral staircase to the 1st floor. And we get to the 1st floor and we hear the yells getting louder and louder, like, rah, 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 you know, just like I hear like the hinges cracking, you know, it just feels like you can hear all of this yelling and screaming. And as we're going down this spiral staircase closer to the street level, like the yells only get louder and louder and louder that you hear. And so,
like more
so
than
we
that.
run to this member's office and I start knocking on the door. I start banging on it. And like at this point, no one is in any of the hallways and we're completely alone. And so I start banging on this door and I said, it's okay. It's me. Let me in. And they may not have heard me or something like that. I call them, and, you know, all of this is, I don't know, maybe happening in 30 seconds, 60 seconds. It's really hard to kind of attest to the passage of time, but it happened so fast, and I just, like, couldn't get through immediately. So I realized that I had actually passed by Katie Porter's office, and all of this stuff was happening so quickly that I saw Katie Porter, like, going into her office, just, like, holding a cup of coffee because all of these developments were happening so rapidly that I think some people were at different awareness levels and at different like urgency levels than others. And so, so I start running back and I remember that I had seen Katie getting, Representative Porter, I gotta put respect on everybody's names. So I saw Representative Porter walking into her office. And so I run back, and I knock on the door and I'm just like bang, 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 bang. And she opens and I'm like, hey Katie, can I shelter with you right now? And Katie's like, yeah, of course, come on in. Like, yeah, come on. And so we go into her office and I'm at like a 10, right? Like I am at a full 10, fight or flight, thought I was going to die like 10 minutes ago, then thought I was going to die again, because I have to tell you that when I was banging on this door, I had thought, fully expected that by this point the building had been breached and there were people walking the hallways. Like this was what I had fully expected to be having been gone on in that moment. And so when we're outside in this hallway alone, I'm banging on this door and I'm thinking, and I'm fully expecting one of these insurrectionists to turn the corner with a gun and that it would be over again. And so we run back, and I'm like at a 10 because I've probably had 2 times today that I already thought that I was going to die. And I'm like, you know, bust into Katie's office, and Katie's like having a cup of coffee, like I think the information's still trickling in, etc. And so I start, you know, ripping through Katie's office like a mad woman. You know, poor Katie, I'm like opening every closet. I'm opening every nook. I'm opening like every cranny, looking for where I'm going to hide when they get into this office. And I tell Katie, I say, because there's a gym in the House office building, and I turned to Katie and I said, have any of your staffers left any workout clothes or anything under their desks? And she was like, yeah, like I'll check. And so, and she starts like looking through, and she finds this bag, and, you know, in just perfect fashion. Like, she's super collected, and I'm just like, we need this, we need that. And she's like, bam, bam. And, you know, we're working together. And so I pull, like, she pulls this like bag of workout clothes from one of her staffers, and it has like sneakers in it. And so I pull the sneakers, and this whole time I'm still in high heels, right? And so I'm like, you know, going around looking through all this stuff. They find some snacks, things like that. And G and some of the other staffers are pushing like the couches up against the door. And, you know, I had this thought then, and I, you know, so many have made this point since, but it's like all of these drills that people had on school shootings. It was like, okay, we're going to push the furniture up against the door. We're going to barricade us in, you know, etc. And so G is like pushing the furniture up. I'm looking for clothes to change into. And the reason why I'm feeling like we need clothes to change into is because if I need to jump out a window, or if I need to run, I need to blend in with the crowd as much as possible. And if I'm in high heels, if I'm in my congressional, you know, if I'm in like workwear and my dress, I'd be easily recognized in a crowd. And so I'm like going through all of these things, and Katie has an extra like puffy jacket, and so she gives me her extra puffy jacket. So I'm in like this puffy jacket, I'm in someone else's puffy jacket, I'm in someone else's sneakers, and I'm fully just like bracing for impact for these people to breach the perimeter of our building. And so many things happen in this period when we were sheltering together. And like all these crazy thoughts go through your mind. And even like just racially, even, you know, Katie and I were having these conversations, and it's like, it like where you feel like we as members, our nameplates are next to our offices, and it's like, are some offices safer than others because they have white sounding names, or because they have male sounding names, or like who would be safer to hide in because you would expect them least in that office, you know, like all these crazy things that you're thinking. And it's like, this is what it's come to. And so we were sheltering in there for a long time, making all these contingency plans. And we turned off all the lights because I was afraid that, you know, it's January in Washington, D.C. The sun sets mad early. It's like 3:45 and the sun is already setting. And so I'm like, we got to turn off all the lights, because if they see the offices with the lights on, like, who knows if they target that. You know, at this point, we start getting intelligence that bombs have been found, about like 1 block away from where we were, 1 or 2 blocks away from where we were, and then a second one like 3 blocks away from where we were. And so I'm also fully expecting, or maybe not expecting, but I'm wondering, like, or feeling or preparing for one of the wings of the building to explode, because we had gotten intelligence that there were bombs found very close to where we were. And so we're sheltering, and I'm thinking, what do we do if the building explodes? What do we do if this happens? What do we do if they break into this office that we're in? And, you know, through all of this, what also felt crazy traumatizing is just feeling like there were people that were willing to do what they needed to do. You know, the incredibly brave staffers that were with us, G and Katie staffers, and others that were with us, and that they were making decisions to put themselves between us and any potential danger that would break into that room. And you really struggle with that because those aren't your decisions, and you don't want anyone to do that. But people say, no, I'm going to
I can't
do
believe
this.
people are trying to like undermine her story, or like say that she's blowing it out of proportion,
you really
or
sit
whatever.
With that, with the weight of that. We had these emergency hoods, and I find out later, when we start getting these emergency announcements, that when they were evacuating our building earlier that day, we were supposed to take our emergency hoods with us. It's a long story. Point is that they're emergency supplies. We were supposed to take our emergency supplies with us, and that Capitol police officer didn't tell us anything about that. He didn't tell us bring your hoods. He didn't tell us do this. He didn't tell us do that. And what's really weird in the aftermath of that situation is that after you see the videos, after you hear about what happened with Capitol Police leadership, after you know that leadership knew about the threats of violence and didn't prepare adequately for it, you start thinking back at all of these things. And, I think about that officer and just the uncertainty. Did he not say that he was Capitol Police on purpose? Did he lose himself in that moment? Did he not give us the extraction point location because he forgot? Or was he trying to actually put us in a vulnerable, situation? Just the very uncertainty that you don't know if that person was actually trying to protect you or not.
Wait, the person who
already deeply unsettling. And I'm not here to say I'm not here to pass judgment on any one individual or on any one officer or this, that, and the other, and a lot of Republicans mischaracterize my position, and Fox News amplifies a lot of these lies, which in turn leads to a lot of violent threats. And I could do a whole other IG live on other times that I thought I was going to die. And I tend to deal with things as well with humor and dark humor. And it was one of the things I was telling my staff that day was well, at least this isn't the first time I thought I was going to die in my first term. But it's that lack of trust that creates so much volatility and fear. And so it's I look back on this memory and I remember trying to excavate every shred of evidence to be it was just a tough situation. But you just don't know. You just don't know. And so, it's an intense situation. So anyways, there's a lot more details in this time that I was barricaded with Katie Porter. But I don't want to belabor it. And I also don't know which of these details quite yet are okay to share and which aren't. But the point of the situation was that we felt completely unsafe. And eventually we did find the extraction point. We did find out what the extraction point was, and we found out that all the members of Congress were being directed to this one point. And with the amount of uncertainty in this situation, I just felt I'm not going there. There were members who were live tweeting the location of the speaker that were probably going to be in that extraction point. There was still uncertainty about whether there were still bombs throughout the city. And it just legitimately did not feel safe. And so, you know, at first I was like, there's no way that I'm going there. And so we stayed in that room. And, you know, the other fear in the situation too is, where was the National Guard? And at the time, you know, now we know more stories about this, but at the time, National Guard wasn't called. And I was starting to get just this feeling in my gut that, like, in any other situation like this, they would be called, they would be here. And they're not coming. And we didn't know if they were being held off or what, but in the event that the National Guard didn't come, it was just a matter of time before the building got breached. And the sun was setting, and in that darkness, things could even get more violent. And so we were just, you know, we didn't know what was going to happen. And so we were probably barricaded in that in that room together. I don't even know how many hours, 5 hours or so. When finally we were able to get out, and we decided that while we weren't going to stay at the extraction point, we would kind of check in to let them know that, you know, where our physical whereabouts were. But also, like, this is why I wasn't tweeting that day. Because first of all, a lot of people were saying I'm okay and I'm safe, but I wasn't safe. I didn't feel safe. And I wasn't gonna lie. And I didn't feel like I was okay or, you know, secure in any way at any point that day. But I did say I'm okay because I was okay for that moment and in that moment. And I felt a little more okay then, but it was just not, the whole situation was not okay. And we didn't know what was going to happen. So then after a little while, we kind of find out that the plan is that we're going to move forward and certify the Electoral College results. And, you know, it was a decision that I support. I think it was a right decision. Even in the moment, though, I was like, what are we doing? Either way, it didn't feel like anything we could do was safe. And in truth, you know, that was very much a possibility, that nothing that we did was a safe option. But you know, ultimately,
but a bit of old
we
news
made the decision
to move on.
And leadership.
No.
You know, folks made the decision that we were sent here to do our duty, and our duty was to certify the results. And that's what we're here to do. And no amount of insurrectionists are going to divert us from that central task of upholding our democracy. But then we had people who still want to challenge the results. And so at this point, you know, there were still going to be quite more votes because there were people still trying to delay and challenge the election results after multiple people had died in the violence of the insurrection. So that meant that we had to wait. And so with the building feeling more secured in that moment, I walked over to my sis, Ayanna Presley's office. And Ayanna, in true form, texts me and she's like, come and eat. So she comes so I go to her office. She and her staffer, Sarah, made sure that I was fed and that I had something to eat. We were there, and I stayed in Ayanna's office, and Katie was there, and I told Ayanna what had happened to me in my office. And I didn't realize, because I was like at that 10 and like being so intense in Katie's office, that in all those hours we were barricaded together, I actually never at any point said out loud to her what had happened. And so I was just like in Katie's office, like out of 10, like where are the closets? What's the exit thing? Shut the curtains, close the lights, like all this other stuff. Yeah, I mean, and it wasn't until she was there and I was telling the story to Ayana that I realized that I hadn't even told it to Katie. And then Katie was like, oh, this is why you were out of 10. And so we stayed in Ayana's office and we were there until about 4 o'clock in the morning. There's other details too. I'm just like not ready for that right now. But yeah, you know, and I stayed with Ayana, and it was when I told the story to Representative Presley, she told me right away, like, that what you experienced was traumatizing and you need to take care of yourself. And it was like having her as a friend and a sister hear what I was saying and tell me that, mentally, it forced me to pump my brakes and be like, oh. So, you know, I think it was so important. And I think for so many people out there, if you have experienced any sort of trauma, like just the fact of like recognizing that and admitting it is already a huge step. Especially in a world where people are constantly trying to tell you that you didn't experience what you experienced.
Where literally you have
you're lying,
a significant portion of the
those
Republican Party
additional traumas
refusing to accept the results of the election, and even vowing to follow Donald Trump to a new party, right of the Republican Party, right of the GOP,
you know, etc.
What do you mean
there's the trauma of going through what you went through,
the rights
and then there's the trauma afterwards of people not believing
they fall in
you,
line. We have
or
debates
trying to publicly humiliate you, or trying to embarrass you. And that also gets internalized too, because a lot of times you don't want to believe it either. You don't want to think that happened to you. You don't want to think that X person hurt you.
No, you don't understand what I'm saying.
That you were a person.
You're incorrect in your assessment that somehow
abused,
right now
assaulted,
the left is more fragmented than the right.
Because you don't want to be like a victim, right? And so there's the doubt that the world puts on you, that bad actors puts on you, that perpetrators put on you, that abuse puts on you, and then there's the doubt that you put on yourself. And so the moment a person actually admits, like, no, this thing happened to me, and they're willing to say that to themselves, I think is also a really important first step. And
the Republican Party is chock full of single issue voters. People who literally show up for their gun rights or to reduce women's rights.
She really...
Or for securing their tax
because
breaks
right in the moment,
if they are part of the ruling class.
You're not extending that time
People
period
vote
where you're like reacting in a weird way. You don't know why. You think you can just move on.
For those single issues all the time.
You know, and even in the aftermath of this whole situation, I have had to check my own thoughts. You know, part of me is like, maybe I shouldn't share this because it's not a big, maybe it's not that it's not a big deal, but like it's not important to the central story of the insurrection, or that like,
what do you mean?
People are gonna say that, oh, she's just trying to make it about her, and all of those, you know, normal nagging thoughts. And like I said, like all of your traumas can kind of intersect and interact. And so, you know, I think
feels a bit right style
that
when you
being
just throw
able
in
to
statements
recognize
next
that
to vid while
early
eating
In the aftermath of the attack, Congress had counselors come in and advise members, especially those who had kind of survived those like initial.
No offense. You're honestly, no. You do mean to offend, because you didn't even make sense with your criticism. Feels a bit right style. When you just throw in statements next to vid while eating, you absolutely meant offense, and that doesn't even make sense either. Right style? What do you mean? Troll is hungry? Yeah, and I'm feeding the shit out of it right now. But please, you're not fooling anyone whenever you say something that's offensive and then follow up with no offense. Please. Eating's great. Eating is great. I'm a professional streamer. Eat on your own time. If I didn't eat while I streamed, I wouldn't eat. This is the first thing that I've eaten. I think it's weird that y'all watch me eat whenever we have a beautiful AOC recounting her traumatic experience. I wish that y'all wouldn't watch me eat, but it's literally the only time that I eat, unfortunately. Makes me a little self-conscious when I think about it.
Tell women and non-binary people that, you know, they're constantly trying to get attention, just for existing and just for saying that they exist. Like, these are the tactics of abusers. And this is at a point where it's not about a difference of political opinion. This is about just like basic humanity. And that's what these people don't get, because they have shown that, you know, we knew that violence was expected on the 6th. We knew that violence was predicated on someone telling the lie, the big lie about our elections. We knew all of this in advance. We knew that violence was planned for the 6th. We knew that violence depended on the lie, on someone upholding the lie that our elections were fraudulent. Lies that Republican secretaries of state said were a lie. Republicans had said it was a lie. Republican governors had said it was a lie, you know, etc. So we knew in advance that violence was planned. We knew that violence needed someone to tell the lie. And these senators, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, knew that it was the lie. And they knew that these violent people needed the lie. And they chose, because they thought it would be politically advantageous to them, they chose to tell the lie. All of these things were known in advance. And then 5, 6 people have lost their lives. Others have lost eyes, limbs. Many more have been traumatized. And yet, after all of that, after they perpetuated that lie, amplified that lie, knowing that violence needed that lie, after they told that lie, after they saw people lose their life on the steps of the Capitol, afterwards, not even an I'm sorry. Not even I didn't know that me doing this would result or contribute to this violence. And if I had known, I wouldn't do it, and I'm sorry. You know, if in the last 3-4 weeks we heard that, my response would be a little different right now. But no, the response in the last 3-4 weeks is, we did the right thing. I would do it again. I would do it again. I don't regret it at all. And so if that is your stance for these insurrectionists and these people who incited the violence, if that's their stance, then that means they continue to be a danger to their colleagues. Because what they are saying is, given those same conditions, I will choose to endanger my colleagues again for political gain. That's what they're saying, without acknowledging anything that they have done, any of the harm that they've created. And that's why we need accountability. We need accountability, because the accountability is not about revenge. It's not about getting back at people. It's not about any of that. It's about creating safety. And we are not safe with people who hold positions of power, who are willing to endanger the lives of others if they think it will score them a political point. Because they want to, run for president 4 years from now? Who cares? Who cares? Like, what is the craven extent of your personal political ambition that you want to be president so bad that you're going to allow people and your own colleagues' lives to be in danger because you think it's going to win you Trump's base? And also, from the perspective of a politician, let me tell you, Donald Trump, he runs a cult of personality. That's not going to transfer to you so quickly and easily as a little base.
They also were afraid that the mob would come for them and their families.
It doesn't work like
if
that.
They did not support Trump's baseless
So even
claims.
from a political perspective,
double down on that.
They are just laying out all their credibility,
cowards,
all their reputation, anything that they could potentially have to be taken as a good faith person in the future, to lay down for someone who just will do nothing for them unless it will personally enrich or benefit him. So it doesn't make any sense. So not only is what they're doing reckless and dangerous and, yes, unpatriotic, to use their terminology, but it's just not smart, just from a political calculation level. So anyways, I think I've chatted a lot of your ears off. I will save this recording so you guys can watch it if it saves. Sometimes, it bugs out and doesn't let me. But I appreciate you all taking the time. In the time since, I have been giving myself time and space to try to heal from stuff. I know a lot of other members of Congress have been trying to take their space. And I think that these are important stories to tell. And I hope that I'm not, as I said, my story isn't the only story. It's far from a central story. But together we have 435 stories. And we need to tell them, because every time a Republican gets on television and tries to say we need to move on and forget about it, they need to be reminded about what they're trying to absolve and excuse. And our stories can do that. And I hope that if you've experienced trauma in your life, I hope you know that you don't need to have experienced the worst thing or the biggest thing. If you experience something, talk to someone about it, acknowledge it in your heart, and I hope that you get the courage to do everything that you need to do to heal. So thank you all so much. Love you all. Big hugs. Happy snow day. And make us...
Oopsie. All right. Was that Ja Rule? Maybe. Excuse me. Chatting is healing. Well, honestly, there is something quite therapeutic about sharing with somebody who is trusting enough or qualified or certified, whether it be a doctor or a close friend, to have those honest conversations with. Restore the soul of the chat, Amy. Okay. And I think that it does make all of the difference to be able to unpack the load that you might be carrying with you, right? And I believe that I have done that plenty of times, chat. And even though it sometimes is really difficult and it can put one in a vulnerable position, ultimately, I do think there is a benefit with opening up and expressing yourself and sharing with somebody or a chat room full of people what you have experienced or the pain that you have endured and the way that you are processing and the conglomerate of emotions tied to one's drama can be so incredibly intricate. And it's really hard to unravel and unpack, but ultimately I think whenever you get to a point where you're able to express yourself in what you are dealing with, that's whenever you're able to really start to move forward and heal. Once everything that you have experienced is past tense, I think that it can be really difficult to continue to talk through recurring trauma. And so if you notice that AOC took a few weeks to be able to process what she had gone through, giving enough time that it's in the past, she can speak on it in the past tense. That is the first step. You have to be able to get to a point where you're no longer experiencing the revolving door, that cycle of trauma, right? Some people, unfortunately, are not afforded that opportunity, which can make it really difficult to be able to put your experiences in a position where you no longer feel as vulnerable once you get that peace of mind that the trauma, the torment, the pain, not so much the pain because that stays with you, the mistreatment, the abuse is indeed in the past and something that you can finally reflect on. Pent-up frustration can cause anger and unhealthy effects. Big fat mom, thank you for the follow. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then that can materialize and manifest in so many ways. It can make you physically sick. It can make you emotionally distressed.